Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been working in IT at the Road and Traffic Agency for almost 7 years now. Started right after getting my degree in computer science, and honestly, it's been a pretty good gig. The pay is decent, the benefits are great, and most of my co-workers are reasonable people. About 2 years ago, I decided to run for the staff council because I wanted to make some positive changes in how our department handled technology upgrades and equipment distribution. Won by a decent margin too, which was pretty cool. Most of my job involves maintaining our systems, helping colleagues with technical issues, and managing our software licenses. We've got a solid setup. Everyone gets a high-performance notebook that can handle whatever software they need. Sure, it runs Windows, but that's never been an issue since all our specialized software works perfectly fine on it. That is, until this new civil engineer showed up. I was having my morning coffee when he barged into my office without knocking. Right away, I could tell this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. He had that look, you know the one, where someone thinks they're about to tell you how the world works. He immediately demanded a MacBook Pro, claiming that his Windows laptop was completely unsuitable for his work. When I asked if there was something wrong with the performance, he arrogantly replied that he only works on Macs, insisting that every professional does, and expressed disbelief that we expected him to use Windows. I set my coffee down and pulled up the specs of his current laptop on my computer. I explained to him that his notebook was actually equivalent in performance to the latest MacBook Pro, and that the computer-aided design software we use works exactly the same on both platforms. He wouldn't listen to reason and demanded to know if I knew who he was. When I mentioned that he'd only been here for 3 weeks and we hadn't had the chance to meet properly, his face turned red, and he started pacing around my office. That's when he pulled out his trump card, announcing that his father was the deputy director of transportation. He bragged about working at 3 different engineering firms that had all provided him with MacBooks, calling our situation ridiculous. He was literally shouting now, causing a few heads to pop up from neighboring cubicles. Then came the threat. He told me to either order him a MacBook Pro or he'd have me fired by the end of the week. I stayed quiet for a moment, opened my cabinet, and pulled out a few documents. I asked him to follow me and he smirked, probably thinking he'd won. We walked to the lobby where our bulletin board was located. I asked him to read the election results for the staff council posted there. He looked at it, then at my name tag, his expression shifting from confusion to anger. He asked if I was threatening him and promised that I wouldn't find another job in this state when he was done with me. I handed him the copy of state employment law I'd brought along and explained about paragraph 40, telling him that, as an elected member of the staff council, I had special protections. I clarified that I couldn't be fired or relocated during my mandate except under extreme circumstances and assured him I wasn't threatening him, just informing him of the law. His face went through about 5 different shades of red before he spluttered that this was ridiculous and threatened to go to human resources. I told him that was his right, but suggested he might want to review our IT equipment policies while he was there. I also pointed out that making threats against staff council members was actually a serious violation of workplace conduct policies. He stormed off, but I wasn't done. I sent a detailed email to Human Resources documenting the entire interaction, including his threats. I copied in the staff council committee and his direct supervisor, attaching our IT policies and a recording from our office security camera showing his aggressive behavior. We have cameras in all public areas for security purposes. 2 days later, he was called into a meeting with Human Resources, his supervisor, and the staff council representative. I wasn't there, but I heard he tried to play it off as a misunderstanding. Didn't work out so well when they played back the security footage. He was put on a performance improvement plan and had to attend mandatory workplace conduct training. His father, the deputy director, sent me a personal apology email. Turns out he wasn't too happy about his son trying to use his position to bully other employees. The new engineer still works here, still uses the Windows laptop, and now takes the longest route possible to avoid passing by my office. Sometimes I see him in the break room, and he practically runs out with his coffee. I just smile and wave. You know what's funny? Last week, his supervisor mentioned that he's actually doing great work now that he's stopped complaining about the equipment. Guess Windows isn't so bad after all. I've been managing this trailer park for almost 15 years now. It's a decent place. Nothing fancy, but it provides affordable housing for folks who need it. Most of our tenants are good people who pay their rent on time and follow the rules. But there's always that one person who thinks they're above everyone else. This one tenant had been with us for about 3 years. At first, she was like any other resident, paid her rent on time, kept her place tidy, and was generally pleasant. But something changed about 6 months ago. She started paying her rent later and later, always with some excuse about why she deserved more time. Last month, she completely stopped paying. When I went to collect, she gave me this whole speech about how she'd been here for years and deserved special treatment. I reminded her that her rent was already 2 weeks late and that I'd been patient enough. She shot back that she'd lived here for 3 years and was my most loyal tenant, arguing that she shouldn't have to pay full price anymore. I explained that everyone pays the same rent, with no exceptions. She then had the nerve to bring up how much money she'd given me over the years, demanding a discount. When I warned her that I'd have to start eviction proceedings if she didn't pay by the end of the week, she practically dared me to try. Well, I did try, and I succeeded. The court date came and went and she didn't even show up. The judge granted the eviction order, and I scheduled the sheriff's department to come enforce it. When eviction day arrived, she acted like she was surprised to see us. She demanded to know what we were doing there. The sheriff's deputy explained they were there to enforce an eviction order and that she needed to gather her belongings and leave. She insisted she'd been nothing but a perfect tenant. When I pointed out she hadn't paid rent in over a month, she snapped that she'd go get her things. She stormed into the trailer, and her dog, this sweet little terrier, was barking at all the commotion. A few minutes later, we smelled smoke. Before anyone could react, she came running out with a lighter in her hand, a crazed look in her eyes. The trailer was already starting to smoke when she suddenly remembered her dog was still inside. Her face went from triumphant to horrified in an instant. She started screaming that her baby was inside and that it was all my fault. She charged at me like a bull, but one of the deputies tackled her before she could reach me. The other deputy rushed into the smoking trailer while his partner handcuffed her on the ground. She was screaming and thrashing the whole time, begging them to let her go and accusing us all of being murderers. The deputy emerged from the smoke carrying her unconscious dog just as the fire department arrived. The emergency medical technicians got right to work on the poor thing, giving it oxygen and checking its vitals. Meanwhile, Karen was still throwing a fit on the ground, yelling about wanting to press charges against all of us, claiming we tried to kill her dog. The deputy told her she was under arrest for attempted arson, assault, criminal mischief, and animal endangerment. The dog ended up making a full recovery, thank God. The fire department contained the blaze before it could spread to other trailers, but hers was completely ruined. She's facing multiple felony charges and looking at serious prison time. The district attorney wasn't impressed by her claim that she was just trying to make a point. Her dog was adopted by one of the emergency medical technicians who saved him. I see them walking around the neighborhood sometimes. The little guy looks happier than ever, and his new owner actually pays their bills on time. I've been dealing with chronic back pain for months now, and after trying various treatments, my doctor finally recommended getting an epidural spinal injection. I had to switch hospitals because my usual one was undergoing renovations in their pain management department. The new hospital had good reviews, so I wasn't too worried. My dad drove me there since I wouldn't be able to drive back after the procedure. We arrived early to handle the paperwork, but that's when things started going wrong. The front desk worker looked at me with confusion and asked if I was Alyssa Smith. When I told them that wasn't my name, they asked if it might be my maiden name. I had to explain that I'd never been married and that wasn't my name at all. Instead of acknowledging their mistake, they started reading out personal information. They asked if a specific social security number was mine, which it wasn't. Then they tried to verify an address that wasn't mine either. They even attempted to confirm an insurance number. But again, none of this information belonged to me. They kept going through this person's entire profile, exposing all her personal information to me. After what felt like forever, they finally created a new entry for me. When I got to the pre-op area, a nurse approached with a wristband. She tried to verify my information by asking if I was Alyssa Smith. I had to explain again that we'd just been through this at the front desk and that I wasn't Alyssa Smith. The nurse just brushed it off, saying it would work for now and they'd fix it later. Before I could protest further, they put someone else's wristband on me. The doctor who came in later was the only one who seemed concerned about this mix-up. She immediately had it corrected before proceeding with my injection. After recovering at home for a few days, I wanted to access my medical records through their patient portal. But when I tried to create an account, the system wouldn't let me. I called their IT department. The IT guy explained that I couldn't create an account because I apparently already had one under the username Alyssa Smith. When I told him that was impossible since I'd never been to this hospital before and that wasn't even my name, he just dismissed it as a confusing mix-up. After putting me on hold for ages, he eventually got me access, but when I logged in, I was horrified. Not only could I see all of Alyssa's medical history, her appointments, vaccinations, and intimate medical procedures, but I could also access her daughter's entire medical record. Every single detail about this child, from birth to present day, was right there in front of me. I spent an hour trying to get the IT guy to understand the severity of the situation. I explained that this was completely wrong, pointing out that I was looking at someone else's private medical information and their child's entire medical history. His response was unhelpful. He claimed he didn't know who that was and suggested I just remove them if I didn't want to see them there. I tried to make him understand that this account belonged to someone else and they'd just given me access to all their private information. He seemed annoyed with my persistence and eventually stopped being helpful altogether. That's when I decided to take action. I contacted the hospital's privacy officer and filed a formal complaint about the breach of privacy. I detailed everything: the wristband incident, the exposed personal information, and the complete access to another family's medical records. The privacy officer took it seriously, telling me that this was a serious violation of privacy laws and promising to launch an immediate investigation. Within days, the situation escalated. The hospital's administrative board got involved and an internal audit was initiated. They discovered that the front desk worker had a history of taking shortcuts when dealing with registration issues. Instead of properly creating new patient profiles, they would often modify existing ones to save time. The consequence? A complete overhaul of their patient registration system, mandatory retraining for all front desk staff, and disciplinary action for those involved. The front desk worker who started this mess was transferred to a non-patient-facing role. As for Alyssa and her daughter, the hospital had to legally inform them about the breach of their medical privacy. They were horrified, of course, but grateful that someone had caught and reported it. The hospital had to provide them with identity theft protection services as a precaution. The regulatory body overseeing hospitals in our area conducted their own investigation, resulting in a substantial fine for the hospital. They are now implementing new safeguards to prevent these sort of incidents from happening again. My back is better now, but I still can't believe how one person's laziness could have put so many people at risk. What if I had been given medication that Alyssa was allergic to? What if her daughter's private medical information had fallen into the wrong hands? I'm a 34-year-old woman who works as a veterinary technician, which is actually how I met my best friend, my golden retriever. 7 years ago, I was working a tough shift when this beautiful golden retriever was brought in, severely malnourished and scared. His previous owners had abandoned him at a gas station, and a good Samaritan brought him to our clinic. I wasn't planning on adopting a dog at that time, but there was just something about him. The way he looked at me with those soulful eyes, despite everything he'd been through, I knew right then that we were meant to be together. After his recovery, I adopted him, and he's been my rock ever since. Fast forward to 2 years ago, I met who I thought was the perfect man at a local farmer's market. He was charming, successful, and seemed to genuinely care about my interests and passions. When I told him about my dog, he was nothing but supportive. When I mentioned having a golden retriever and explained that he was basically my furry child, he responded enthusiastically. He told me he loved dogs and mentioned that he and his daughter used to have one before discovering her allergies. When I asked about how serious the allergies were, he admitted they were pretty severe but brushed it off, saying it wouldn't be an issue since we didn't live together. Guess I should have pressed harder about those allergies, but I was too caught up in the romance of it all. We dated for a year and a half before he proposed, and I was over the moon. Everything seemed perfect until he suggested moving in together before the wedding. He brought up the idea of living together first to get used to being a family. When I expressed excitement about the idea, he suggested moving in the next month since his lease was ending. I worried it might be too soon and asked about his daughter's allergies, but he dismissed my concerns, assuring me they would figure it out and it wouldn't be that bad. But it was that bad. Within days of them moving in, his daughter started having severe allergic reactions. I tried everything I could think of to make it work. I spent thousands of dollars on air purifiers, hired professional cleaners weekly, and kept my dog strictly in my home office when she was around. I even offered to board him during her visits. Eventually, he confronted me saying these half measures weren't working since his daughter needed to use her inhaler constantly. When I acknowledged the difficulty but suggested looking into allergy shots for her, he shot down the idea, saying it wasn't fair to ask that of a 9-year-old. Instead, he demanded that I rehome the dog. When I protested that he'd known about my dog from the start, he simply said things change and that I needed to start thinking like a mother now. The conversation only got worse from there. His family started calling and texting me constantly. His sister accused me of being heartless toward a little girl, while his mother insisted that if I truly loved her son, I'd do what was best for his daughter. Even some of my so-called friends turned against me. One suggested that maybe his family had a point, dismissing my dog as just a dog. I had to remind them that my dog had been with me through everything, through my mother's passing, through my depression, through every single hard day. He wasn't just anything. The final straw came last week. I came home from work to find him browsing shelter websites. He tried to show me a nice family looking to adopt an older dog, bragging about their big yard. I cut him off immediately and said my decision not to rehome my dog. That's when he suggested we needed to rethink the wedding, and I agreed. I handed him back the ring right then and there. But turns out he had been planning this all along. I found out through a mutual friend that he had already been looking at my house as the perfect home for him and his daughter. And he'd been telling people that, of course, I would choose them over just a pet once they moved in. Well, surprise! Instead of rehoming my dog, I rehomed my fiancé. He and his daughter moved out last weekend, and you know what? My dog and I are doing just fine. My real friends, the ones who stuck by me, helped me sage the house and throw a dodge-the-bullet party. My dog got a special steak dinner, and I got my peace of mind back. Sure, some people still think I'm the bad guy, but I can live with that. What I couldn't live with was betraying the one family member who has never let me down. As I write this, my furry best friend is snoring away next to me, probably dreaming of tennis balls and treats. And I'm dreaming of a future where I don't have to choose between my loyalty and someone else's expectations. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.